This is master woodworker Andrew Jack, and these are some of the Windsor chairs he builds by hand, both traditional and contemporary. Andy has come to Falls Village to conduct a workshop on whittling. Participants will carve butter knives and spoons out of chunks of wood.
They'll all be the same. So, good. Sift through there. There should be 2-3 shapes in there, anyways. And, there's enough for extras if we need. Or does anybody have knives at home, or like a pen knife that you like? So you can take. I don't need to take any of these home necessarily with me, but I can. I mean, these are just some patterns I made up. They all kind of serve the same function. You can take these, copy them, whatever you want to do. None of this is like intellectual property. What I've got here are some brand new Mora 106s.
I think this is exactly the one I have at home.
Oh, good, excellent.
I'm a little wondering.
Because they're new, maybe? I alternate between one of these and a 120, and then some knives I have from a smaller forge. These are excellent starter knives. They'll do all the cuts we need to make them do. Maybe I can do a class sometime on birch bark sheaths. That's kind of fun. It's just birch bark, and it's just a cover for the knife, right? I know from looking at this as a bandsaw down through these cathedrals on this tangential plane that there's going to be a transition zone somewhere in here where I'm going to have to come downhill this way and downhill that way and meet in the middle, right? The same is actually going to happen on this face, although it's a lot harder to read. It's easier to shave, harder to read. That's what you have to give up when you work with these edge tools. Now on the back side, it's just as easy to read. So it's going to be somewhere in here. I know I'm going to have to work downhill and work downhill. Obviously out here, we're going to go downhill with respect to the grain. We're not going to... You'll know right away if you start to cut uphill into this grain, that tool's going to grab and it won't let you, and if you try to force it, you'll slip and cut yourself, or it'll chunk out the wood. None of that's any good. So we're always going to go from the high point to the low. I demonstrate a lot at craft fairs and stuff, and sometimes when you mention to people that the trees are full of water, they're like, what? And so sometimes it's that far back into the basics, and sometimes it's like, okay, there's a structure that we have to respect, and just the properties of the wood. Some of these may have some marks where I split them out remaining, and others may be a little bit more in bandsaw state. Because I split this out along the fiber line to start, I know that's the orientation, right? If this was completely sawn out with no regard to the grain direction, I would have really no idea what that structure was like, and I'd have to find that fiber line with a knife, right? Just for an example. Yeah, I think the easiest way to approach this is to think about center line. You guys can use the Sharpie if you like. And that'll just kind of help keep the cuts organized. I tend to leave a lot of facets on my work. You can take and sand these to full smoothness if you like. But for us, for today, the knife work is the ticket. So you kind of can just pick a place to start. I like to start on the handles of these ones. It kind of gives me an idea of the way the wood is working, where these transition areas are going to be, and the easiest thing to do is to start by narrowing this tangential face, which is much tougher to cut. So if you start by making these facets that are kind of on the angle here, you'll narrow this facet in the middle, which gives you less surface area on that tougher face to carve. It's the same way I make all the chair parts and stuff. It's always minimizing the labor. So for this one, starting at the top of the handle, I'm just going to keep doing Sharpie just because it's easy to see. I'm going to start by knocking off some corners. right? Now because there's a transition right up the top here too, I'm going to start kind of just behind it with kind of a power cut. So I don't want to lock my elbow because I don't want to hyperextend it, but I want to keep it like just short of locked, right? I'm going to start the cut with the heel of the blade. I'm going to start back here. I know that I can start downhill from this cut because it's a power cut and I'm going to waste away quite a bit of wood there, but I want to slice and use as much of that blade as I can, right? So yeah, do you guys want to give it a shot? Get a couple of starting cuts going? I mean,
Sure.
from here I can pull towards myself. Yeah, and like there's a stop. And as long as my hand is down out of the way like that, you know, you're really in pretty good shape as far as safety goes. So here again, I'm using the heel of the knife down to the tip. I'm skewing the blade with relation to the cut, right? So by skewing it and slicing it, I'm taking away a lot of that input force that's required if you skip that, right? So if you're just square across the cut and you're pulling straight towards yourself, it's going to take a ton more effort. You're going to get a terrible cut. It's dangerous. So you might as well, you know, skew the blade and use the whole thing. So they're all going to be a little bit different. And then yeah, just I come back the other way, same fashion. Keep my hand down out of the way, right? However, you got to hold it to make that happen. And just sort of meet it right down there in the valley. So, yeah, that's a good start. I like to work the top of the back of the piece just to kind of get my bearings, get familiar with the density of the wood and how the knife is cutting and all these other factors. So. So there you go. And I just kind of, a lot of times I find that I'm kind of working the whole thing all at once. I'm always kind of tumbling it around in my hands and just figuring out where those next cuts have to be. Take a minute and kind of look at where it's become a little lopsided, right? You can tune it up. But that's more about my process than anything else. So I'm on this radial face, right? That quarter sawn face with all the flex in it. And so sometimes what can happen is if you're right along the fiber line, even though if you think you're coming downhill, like it'll still kind of act like peckish,
tear around a little.
right? And so what you can do is you can very often find a better approach with the knife. So I'm going to take this huge shearing cut and kind of slice my way through it.
More of an angle.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
There are times when that's not the ticket. You got to come in like, even though you're going to go the same direction, you can skew the other way, right? So I've got the complete opposite skew going now, but even though I'm going the same direction with respect to the wood. So sometimes you got to play around a little bit and figure out how the wood wants to be cut. It's hard not to anthropomorphize it. The wood doesn't really want to be cut. I use words like cooperate.
Yeah, yeah.
This is what the butter knife looks like, fully carved. And this is our next whittling project, a futuristic spoon.
I think what we'll do is we'll start with the back of the bowl. So it's not real obvious from the shape what we're looking at, right? So this is going to eventually, the bowl will be down in here. You can kind of adjust the size for how you like to eat. You know, I don't have a big mouth, so a lot of the ones that I eat with are like sort of between a teaspoon and a tablespoon. So the sky's the limit. This is just a basic architecture to use. You know, these are from like real straight grain wood, so I've kind of made the crook.
Sure.
But you can find the same kind of crook in a tree and use it, or you can steam bend it like I do for a lot of the ones that I've shown you before. So what we'll do is we'll start with some of those power cuts, where you just kind of make sure that there's nothing below you, right? Start at the heel of the blade. We're just going to take the back of the bowl and round it over. As you're picking up a new tool, a new knife, you know, a lot of the chair carving tools are very unique, and most people pick them up and they're like, oh, I get it, it's two handles, I'm just going to grip it and rip it. The best way to learn any edge tool, and this goes for working at the lathe or whittling or whatever you want, right, is start by practicing not cutting, right? So roll the tool back to where there's no way you're going to hit that edge, right? And then just very slowly introduce that cutting edge. Find where it picks up the shaving, and that's really as deep as you have to go, because if you start too deep, you're just going to get frustrated, you're going to get hurt, right? So you can take that lesson and tell everybody, just practice not cutting. That's how to get started, right? And with any of these strokes, you either want to make sure there's nothing below you that you can slice yourself, like down here I've got all this clear space, right? It's either that, or you want to make sure that there's a built-in, like a physical stop. Like right here, I can't, you know, if I'm doing one of these, like I know that I can't cut myself there. So before you start any, like, you flip your grip around and get into a new position, just like check yourself and say, like, can I cut myself before you go and put any pressure on the knife? And if you can, that means you got to kind of readjust and move yourself down out of the way, right? Keep yourself clear of the blade. These are just sort of the pointers I need to, like, rehash.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's good.
Doesn't hurt.
Nobody gets hurt, yeah. So yeah, what I'm looking for here is if there's the spoon, like the bowl part, right? If you flip it over, you want to have a nice, you know, rounded shape there, and we're going to work off the front as well. So I usually start by taking the corners off. Talking about grain direction and the way it's going to change here, because this piece was bandsawn out of a straight piece of wood, somewhere, I know that somewhere like right in here, I'm going to have to be working this way and that way. I don't know quite where it is. I might have to take some kind of exploratory cuts and figure out which way the grain wants to be cut. But I know that this knuckle here that I've created is going to go that way. Now for that, you can try some of those power cuts. I've got to sharpen this knife actually. What I tend to do in this case is I run it away from me and I push with my opposite thumb. I use this cut all the time. That's probably why my thumb hurts. So there you can get in from the tip to the heel. Use as much of that blade as you can. The more you can slice, the less effort you'll put in, the better off you'll be. Sometimes I'll flip it around and get one of these going. Like you actually have to be like 90 degrees to the seat and work across the grain.
It like using a scrub plane, like going diagonally across the board.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I was just doing the edges of boards in the beginning, and then.
Yeah, and so working this stuff dead green like we are, if you kind of just chunk out the shape, take away as much material as you can without making those finish cuts, that's kind of the goal, because then you want it to dry, and as it dries, you know, it'll twist, it'll cup, it'll do all kinds of things. But you want to leave enough material to make adjustments for that. If you're going to be, you know, picky about it, if you're just making a spoon for yourself, then make 100 and then figure that out. One of the things I wanted to mention is if you are flipping it around and working all little bits like I do, you know, because this is sawn from the tip of the bowl down into that little narrow, we're going to be working down into the valley rather than off the end, right? So that can always, you know, you can start out here and get one of these slicing cuts. And here I'm just using my left thumb as a fulcrum and almost like a brake. Just slide that around. What I'm doing here is just kind of establishing the rim of the bowl. before I get the hook knife to it.
Frame, so that when you drive the pin in, it pulls it in tight, like
Yep.
timber framing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it worked. I never heard about it again. It didn't get sent back to the shop. But somebody else was explaining that it's great to do all that, but if you do put glue in there, it's going to hold things together, you know, for the first 5 or 10 years,
Right.
a lot better. Well, I'd like to see the hook knives.
Yeah. All right.
Unless, what do you guys think? I just want,
Yeah. Let's do that. So here's some hook knives for you guys. To
is that what
use.
you call them?
Yeah.
Or,
I just call them a hook knife.
yeah, okay.
There's a hook knife in there, and there's a hook knife in here. Special delivery.
Thank you.
These especially, if you have to set them down, just set them down like in the box
Sure,
or something,
yeah.
just because there's such a thing to sharpen.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully these are in decent shape. I just reground them yesterday from what they come from the factory, just to get some clearance behind the cutting edge. So,
I was so frustrated with mine. I've had it for a couple of years, and the edge was real sharp.
yeah.
But it was just the,
So basically, as we're working towards ourselves, you want the tool to kind of skew this way as you're working this surface, and then when you come back for this uphill part, you're actually going to have to skew it the other way. I'm imagining. And of course, somewhere down in here, like roughly where that bandsaw mark is, there'll be a transition. And to get that cleaned up, you just kind of have to go more or less straight across. So yeah, it's you can practice not cutting with these ones too. Just get that little movement going. It's all in your grip strength is really where you get the power for this one. You can do this with a carving gouge, right? You can carve it out like this. You can take one of these and run it like this. Whatever you do, just make sure there's no body part in the way of a slip, because that's how you're gonna get cut 9 times out of 10. Warp or something, but it's not gonna check.
Yeah.
in front of his car. He's like, where'd this happen? And he told me it was one of the Woodland restaurants. Because I could see the leaves that were stuck in his grill. It was a basswood tree. And I went over there and grabbed a log.
Somebody told me that the guy lost his barn on Dugway over that last storm. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it came in as a brush fire, and then a few seconds later, it was a
Structure.
confirmed structure barn fire.
Yeah, lightning, yeah?
Yeah, it sounds
Wow.
like it.
That's really too bad. That was a beautiful building. I mean, it was, I don't know, beautiful, but it was pretty cool.